Wonder about the future and how you'll be working and learning? Welcome to You in 2042, the future of work, with your host, Danielle Wallace.
Hello and welcome to You in 2042, the future of work. Joining me today is Sotos.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for having me today. Okay, Sotos Poulimenos, born and raised in Athens, Greece, and I came to North America back in 2013. So my career started back in Europe in finance. I was for a little bit an entrepreneur. I had my own company. Then I moved to the States for my graduate studies. I studied organizational psychology at Columbia University, and then I did another master's in project management, focused on learning technologies. And then I started working first at Deloitte in New York, then moved with Deloitte to Toronto in Canada. And after about 6 years in consulting, I moved to what we call industry, right? So now I work with Sun Life. I'm their director of global talent development there for the past 3 years or so.
That's neat. And that's a neat career over different countries and everything. And with that, I imagine all the change that happened along that journey makes it kind of fun and cool.
A lot of
And
moving.
that's a lot of packing. And then thinking about some of those changes and such, I'm curious about what changes we might see in the future, even getting us to like 2042. What do you
Yeah.
think we might see?
That's a great question, and I think it can be answered in so many different ways, and probably depending on who you ask, like they're going to give you a different answer. In general, we anticipate technology to keep transforming itself, evolving rapidly. So I think that companies will need to rethink how to integrate people with machines, right? How do you turn a machine into a valuable colleague? How do we clarify that the machine is not here to take your job, but to make your job easier and, give you back some valuable time? So due to technologies, advancements, and the pivotal role that I think it's going to keep playing, I think another thing is the upskilling and kind of like the concept of digital dexterity. That's going to be another big change, right? So I think that being able to kind of be adaptable and learn new skills will outweigh pretty much past experience and then things like tenure, right? So we're going to see more and more people getting hired into jobs, especially with Gen Alpha, who, by the way, 50% of them are expected to not pursue an academic degree. So we will have 50% of our future workforce not having degrees. However, they will have skills, right? They will have experiences. So how do we kind of adjust adjust the business practices to entertain the needs of such a workforce?
Yeah, it's fascinating as we think about our current mold of tenure and degrees and your past experience and all those accolades that stack people's resumes of like, great, now you can move to that role. And what you're saying, Sotos, is just this different shift, this modern shift. It's not about all those written elements on one's resume, it's about what skills you bring and what experience
Exactly.
do you have. Like
Yeah.
that's super cool in this future world.
So, middle managers today, we base success on being able to manage the process and the outputs and all that. This is still going to be important. However, I think there's going to be a shift with regards to, the role of your manager as a coach, the role of your manager as a teacher, right? Versus someone who just gives you direction and then you just go and execute. And I do think that this is going to be one of the big changes that we see, not only because, as we said, Gen Alpha, also Gen Z today, and the millennials who are becoming kind of like the older part of the of the continuum there. All these three categories of people really value interpersonal connection, empathy, interaction, learning growth. So naturally, when you go to work, you will want to work with someone who will foster all these things. I do think there's another shift there from your typical middle manager, boss, director to more of a this person is my leader and this leader is also my coach and they teach me things and they support me in doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and that's where we're not seeing that happening globally today. And so it's, again, you're looking into the future. So the current workforce loves it when the manager's a coach and guides them and nurtures them. But we still see that most managers in the world are managing processes. They're managing output. They're managing employee performance, just like you're saying. And that's our mind shift that we currently have, but that's not what we need now. We rapidly need this mind shift change to actually rethink even the role of how the leader is now, let alone setting us up for the next few decades.
Yeah. And should I just also address the elephant in the room, which is I mean, there's two elephants. One is AI, and the other one is the office setting, like the role of the physical workplace. I do think that there's a shift there that we need to be very mindful about. So I don't think people are going back to the office unless it's absolutely necessary for critical roles. I don't think that people, especially knowledge workers, are going back to the office like 5 days a week. There's kind of this big shift towards, more like hybrid. I think that there is an opportunity to leverage the office as a place, as a hub for innovation, for building community, for these kind of moments that matter in one's tenure with the organization or the company. What do you miss by not going to the office? But also, what do you gain by going there? What do you miss by always working from home? But also, what do you gain through working from home?
Yeah, it's not such the clear cut solution that is wanted right now in the workforce. And that's why I think we're seeing so much bumpiness on that. And it's interesting as we look out into the future, the office truly does become this hub for community innovation. It really allows that leader, as you're saying, to be acting as head coach, to be able to work as a group, even pulling in those disparate skills you spoke about earlier. It's just not just about tenure and role, it's about, oh, we have these skills and we're coming together.
And not just the manager, if I may jump in here, not just the manager plays this new role, but also team members themselves are put in a situation, are put in a condition where they need to act as peer mentors, right? When I think about the future, this is how I think setting people up for success. Make sure the expectation is there. Make sure kind of the appetite is there to try things, different things, right? And enable people to do things differently. Give people the power. As long as we explain what's needed, as long as we explain that we are here to support you as an organization, to support you as an employee, to grow, whether you're a manager, a leader, right? The more we're able to do that, the more we'll see things like retention, engagement, job satisfaction, tenure within the company, lateral movements within the company, staying with the organization. These indicators go up.
Yeah, it becomes the way that we have a more empowered and aligned and a better workforce,
Yeah.
especially in contrast to some of the current models that are there. With this in mind, what do you think people will require then to be future ready and successful?
Here's what really kind of like gets me going sometimes is when people talk about soft skills, which I really don't like this terminology. For example, the ability to be able to adapt, the ability to build this muscle of resilience, the ability to diversify your skill set. That's a skill in and of itself, right? Some organizations call them power skills. I remember Deloitte Consulting that I used to work for used to call it the enduring human capabilities, right? Essentially, what are all these things, right? These are things that no matter if you're in the workplace, at home, at a cafeteria drinking coffee, at the supermarket shopping, or talking to your kids in the playground, these are the skills that are applicable everywhere, right? So I think that there's going to be more and more demand for kind of this liberal arts kind of degree slash skill set slash a right brainer because these are the folks that bring in questioning, innovation. They talk about how they bring creative approaches to solving existing problems, right? They question the status quo, and this is what's needed. I think that especially with Gen Z and looking into the future more with Gen Alpha, these are generations that have been massively impacted by two things. One is, the advances of technology, and the second one is the impacts of COVID-19. These folks have seen their parents or themselves work from home overnight, right? And have to deal with that and have to deal with all the challenges that come with I don't have an office at home. Do I work from my kitchen table? Right? What does that mean? So this kind of created this psychological circumstances and social circumstances where people will have actually started to want different things. And these different things, they revolve around well-being and understanding and fostering trust and an environment of safety and development. That's why now more than ever, and in the future, I think all these kind of right brain activities will kind of be on fire. The innovation, the questioning, the communication, negotiation, all these things that kind of bring people together.
It's the point to reflect upon because it is this culminating circumstances that lead to the craving more differences. It solidifies the importance of realizing, no, actually, this is a change that we will be experiencing.
I think it will be very interesting to see how my niece and nephew, who are now 7 and 8.5, how they're going to behave when they become 18 or 20. Will they want to go to college to get a job, or will they be experts in using artificial intelligence tools that we don't even know will exist by then, and they just learn to do it in their day by day? So I think as leaders and as businesses, that's what we need to be able to anticipate. So we need to be able to embrace kind of the ambiguity of tomorrow, keep our, minds open, our antennas up for all the signals, and don't be afraid to say, you know what, maybe something worked in a certain way until today. It's okay if it works in a different way in the future.
It truly is that minds open, antennas up, and take that as this is the next first step to where we're heading in the future. And in thinking about your nephew and niece, and be interesting to think whether they have different career paths. What do you think about the way people plan their careers and how that might change?
So when my mom started working back in the late 60s, and my dad, the approach was, get a job, stay in the job forever. You'll be able to afford a car and a house, and maybe in the future, after you have kids, you will also be able to afford like a summer home somewhere. That was in, like the 60s, 70s. Myself, I don't ascribe like I don't ascribe to that at all. And I think I'm not the exception. There are many things that have changed the way people think of their careers. We've been so through many crises, whether public health crisis to financial crisis to world peace crisis. Right? There's so many crises that we've been through that we have learned to prioritize different things like well-being, like growth, because these are the things that'll help you stay in the game and get the next opportunity when it comes about. You're kind of zigzagging within either the same organization or within the same industry or among industries. People change, right? There's like a 2.5 to 5 year period where we see people jump from job to job, from role to role, from industry to industry. And eventually, that's in reality what businesses need. They need these kinds of professionals. The degree won't matter as much as your experience. What have you done? What have you learned? And how can you add value through these things to my organization in this new role that I want you for?
Yeah, it really comes to those skills that you're bringing forward, which you mentioned.
Exactly.
So then what can leaders do to help?
It's interesting because I think this is a shared responsibility, right? I think that leaders are responsible for 50% of it, and the other 50 is, you yourself, right? Speaking specifically, about the leaders, I think I mentioned earlier kind of like this concept of being comfortable with ambiguity. And this is difficult. Why? Because traditional industries, finance, insurance, manufacturing, they are so risk averse. They're like, we need to embrace ambiguity. And at the same time, they have like 50 internal processes and red tape that needs to go just to approve like a polling tool for employees to use during their workshops. So embrace ambiguity is one of the things that I think leaders need to become comfortable with. And then I also referred to that earlier, the intentionality around development. Make sure that we give people the time to learn, to fail. Make sure we set that as an expectation in the workplace. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. Let's make sure that we act as enablers to people's development. Let's make sure that we facilitate their growth and we actually sponsor it and we support it. And not only that, but we actually demand it. We demand of our people to grow for as long as they're with us. We expect them to try different things. I think that's where the value is. And it's not easy, of course. In theory, great. We talk about theory here and everything is beautiful. In practice, this means a lot of hours, a lot of resources, money invested in things like coaching and mentorship and assignments for people to try different things and fail in order to foster this environment that will eventually kind of help us be more successful with all
And
these societal and cultural implications that we're talking about. Yeah.
And yet, our current work environment isn't set up right now to embrace ambiguity en masse.
As human beings, you know, let's take a step back and think about ourselves, right? We have the lizard brain, right? We are wired in a way to mitigate risk, right? To avoid ambiguity. That's why we create all these scenarios in our heads for the simplest thing, like what kind of salad should I eat tonight? So, of course, that is going to spill over to every aspect of our life. And one aspect of our life is our work. So when I get to the point where I make decisions about the future of work, my lizard brain is still there. When the stakes are high, the lizard brain is even more jumpy. When you play with other people's money, the stakes are very high. My lizard brain says, hold off, no to everything, keep everything as is because it's working, don't try new things. I really don't think that this is going to help us move forward in the future. And we see that with the smaller, more agile, more flexible players coming in every single industry. The smaller players, the ones that think outside the box and have the courage, right? These are the ones that are starting to kind of, take a bigger and bigger share of the market.
And those are the ones that don't look towards today's conventions as the solutions for the future. And it's hard to go into that future when we are collectively handcuffed to doing what's proven, what has always worked, not allowing
It's
people the intentional development.
right. I mean, it is the definition of insanity, right? Like, keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. Okay, you must be crazy, right? You need to change something. And then, and that's the theory, right? How do we turn that into practice? So there's so many implications there, from cultural implications to organizational design implications to governance, like all these things that impact the way businesses operate.
But maybe it starts with having your minds open, your antennas up, each of us individually, to be able to start to orient ourselves towards realizing this is the future that we're all heading towards. What can I be aware of now that helps me, and then collectively the organization, be attuned to that.
I agree, and I love how you tied that back into what we've been discussing. And I would add, be courageous enough to call these things out. Call things out when they're not working. When you foresee that something is not going to bode well, say it, right? If we don't do that, then there's always going to be the odd one out that always says, "Oh, but I think we should do something different." And then everybody will be pointing at that person when what we need is more of those people. We need to foster these people. And if we do that, if we support them and invest in those folks and encourage this kind of thinking, you'll see how these people that are usually, the odd one out, you'll see how they'll become the norm and how they'll start seeming less aggressive.
I think all of this sets up for some practical steps and a really interesting insight into what may be to come. Any other last thoughts to share with our listeners?
I will just say again that courage, resilience, and adaptability are things that have taken all of us, have led us throughout our lives. Let's make sure we mindfully know when these come at play and we strategically activate them when the time is right. I'm like, okay, is this a case where I need to be more flexible? Is this a case where I need to say, you know what, let it go, be resilient? Sometimes things need to go a different way. That way of thinking. It's helped me. It's helped people that I've coached and mentored. I think it's a safe-ish bet.
That's a good bet. I like that. I like that so much. Sotos, thank you so much for your time and insights. This has been a lot of fun.
It was, Danielle, a pleasure. I love the work that you do. Keep going. I look forward to your next podcast.
Thank you for being a part of the future. Subscribe now to stay current.